Part of the reason why Marvel movies are so successful is because they're basically always on brand, with a consistent tone that the audience can expect. It's almost like Marvel's the cinematic equivalent of a McDonald's or a Starbucks, and I mean this in a good way, not as an insult. Those are huge brands with gajillions of loyal customers that consistently make gobs of money. Marvel movies have lots of jokes, even when their storylines go to serious places. Sometimes the humor is so extreme the movies almost seem like comedies instead of action movies. Marvel fans expect this from the MCU, and it's something the MCU consistently provides. It emphasizes the fun in blockbuster action movies, and visually, there's lots of color. Recently, DC has created a more fun tone in their superhero movies, exemplified by Aquaman and Shazam, which are much brighter than earlier DC movies, both literally and figuratively. Visually, the upcoming Wonder Woman 1984 also seems extremely colorful from the posters and first trailer, as does Birds of Prey. The emphasis on color and fun adventure is a noticeable shift in newer DCEU movies from the older ones. However, unlike most MCU movies, DCEU movies, even these lighter ones, are often edgier and more serious. Let's start with Aquaman. It's the DCEU's most financially successful movie to date, and ironically, the most Marvel-like DC movie that's been made so far when it comes to plot construction and story beats. It also has vivid color and humor. But there's a difference. Aquaman, despite the humor, didn't have as much comedy as a typical Marvel film. Sure, jokes were there, but not to the degree that you see in some MCU adventures. Aquaman was light, but I wouldn't call it silly, not like Thor Ragnarok or the first Ant-Man movie. Those had several jokes and running gags, whereas Aquaman would just have a funny line here and there. Shazam, which was critically successful, had even more funny bits than Aquaman, but also not in your typical MCU way. The main character was a man-child, and the movie had many jokes, but the storytelling style evoked classic 80s adventure comedies like Gremlins or Back to the Future. Shazam's comedy, while present, didn't threaten to overpower its dramatic or horror elements. Sometimes Marvel movies, on the other hand, have so much comedy they almost seem like sitcoms and drown out the action. Fights almost take a back seat to laughs. Justice League's theatrical cut had a lot of levity, and Superman was more upbeat than he was in older DC movies. Yet visually, Justice League's overall color tone and aesthetic style harkened back to the dimmer, more somber color palette that the original director, Zack Snyder, preferred from the DCEU of old. Many people peg Wonder Woman as a lighter DC movie, but I think they're incorrect. Wonder Woman was dark and serious, and the main character was brutal. She killed German soldiers, and she impaled General Ludendorff through the chest with her sword. Wonder Woman's entire goal originally was to slaughter Ares, the god of war, not beat him up and send him to jail. In the movie's climax, she came this close to losing faith in humanity and dropping a tank on Dr. Poison, which would have crushed Dr. Poison into mush. One of Wonder Woman's soldier friends suffered from PTSD, traumatized by the horrors of war. There was some pretty hardcore stuff going on in that movie. We'll see what Birds of Prey's like next year, but since it's rated R, I imagine it'll have dark humor and gritty violence, unlike typical MCU movies. And the script for James Gunn's Suicide Squad movies also supposed to be funny, according to some of the movie stars. But I'll wager that it'll be darker too. Suicide Squad's a franchise about criminals who get brutally killed during missions, sometimes by getting blown up, stabbed, or shot to death, among other things. So, it's probably not something you'll see on Disney+. DCEU movies, even at their most fun and harmless, never overdo it with the laughs. And I know what some of you may be thinking. I'm lumping all Marvel movies into the same light and fluffy boat, which is inaccurate. Sometimes they are a bit darker with serious themes. Avengers Endgame included a decapitation and multiple gut-wrenching moments, after all, and the MCU's future is supposed to have the raunchy mercenary Deadpool in it. So, yes, Marvel movies can indeed be serious and edgy. There's an exception to every rule. My point is, for the most part, the MCU brand veers more toward the light than the dark. The DCEU, on the other hand, never seems to get too silly, even when it tries to loosen up a bit. But as the years go by, we'll see how the two superhero juggernauts evolve. Who knows, maybe the MCU and the DCEU of 5 years from now will be drastically different from the ones of today. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.